All right, so thank you so much for coming to our practicum information session today. My name's Alyssa. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the new experiential learning coordinator students, supporting both students in health studies and kinesiology. Tonight, I'm joined by my colleague, Allison, and I will let Allison introduce herself.
Sure thing. Thank you very much. As mentioned, my name is Allison Campman. I am the new experiential learning coordinator on the partnership side. So I work with the employers to find practicum opportunities and internship opportunities for you.
Amazing. Thanks for being here with us tonight, Allison.
Thank you.
So before we get in, I'd like to begin with a land acknowledgement. So I'm zooming in from Western's main campus in London, Ontario, which means that my feet are planted on the traditional lands of the Anishinaabeg, Haudenosaunee, Lenape-Wauk, and Chinookan nations, on lands connected with the London Township and Sombra Treaties of 1796 and the Dish with One Spoon Covenant Wampum. As I think about practicums for all of you in various health-related organizations, I'm also reminded of the inequities that exist for many Indigenous peoples in Canada when trying to access healthcare, like lack of proximity to the appropriate kind of healthcare provider or experiencing discrimination while navigating healthcare systems. Access to timely, adequate, and appropriate care is needed to lead to better healthcare outcomes. As future leaders and providers working in health, I encourage you to think critically about these inequities and the steps that you can take to close the gap on inadequate access to healthcare for everyone. So here's an overview of what we'll go through, the benefits of participating in a practicum, getting into those course codes and more of what to expect, the application or the survey process. We'll talk more about this resume and interview workshop, get more into matching, go through some examples and hear from some students that are currently doing placements. And lastly, we'll talk about next steps. So practicums are an absolutely great opportunity to engage with as a student. It's that chance to kind of put what you've learned in the classroom into practice in an environment outside of our campus. It's also a chance to start growing your network, to think about what you might want to do after graduation, maybe working in some of these areas, or, you know, getting connected with different practitioners and that kind of thing. It's a chance to build skills, if they're really hands-on skills that relate to your profession, or perhaps softer skills that employers are looking for across the board, like time management, critical thinking, teamwork, listening, that kind of stuff. And also, it's a really wonderful chance for you to learn more concretely what you like and what you don't like. Maybe seeing a type of environment or organization that you would love to work for, or maybe having a really valuable experience, but learning that it was okay for maybe 6 to 8 hours per week, but not something that you would like to be doing every single day for an extended period of time. Both of those are really, really meaningful. So let's jump into the courses themselves. And as a reminder, we'll be talking about health studies, rehabilitation sciences, kinesiology, clinical kinesiology, and those courses tonight as they relate to practicum. But what we're not going to cover are the athletic injuries practicum or the sports management practicum. The athletic injuries practicum is handled by a completely different team. But for the sports management practicum, while myself and Allison facilitate that process, it's not until the winter term. So just know that much of the information today would be relevant to sports management, but the actual applications for that will be released in the fall, and we'll also be sure to do some more sessions just like this. I know some of you are also considering applying to the athletic injuries practicum, so just know that you're totally welcome to apply to both. Typically, decisions for that one are made in May, which is before we get into the bulk of the matching for our process. So you'll kind of have a decision before, so you could know, because you wouldn't be able to do both, but you should know where things are at with athletic injuries before getting too far into the process. For the course, just know that you can apply to both. But let's jump in. So for the health studies practicum, you're looking at those 2 course codes there. Some students will choose to engage in a practicum for just a term, either fall or winter, or some students may secure a placement for the full year, just knowing that that placement would be at the same organization. Now, health studies practicums are for students that are in an honors specialization module or perhaps an honors double major, looking at that cumulative average of at least 75%. Now, while actually in the practicum course, your placement hours would be about 6 to 8 a week and then 75 throughout the course of a term. And just looking again at the course codes, those are essay courses, so you're getting graded with a numeric grade. Some of the ways that you get that grade are through a learning contract, reflections, your supervisor's evaluation, as well as some other assignments that your instructors will put in there. Now for Rehabilitation Sciences, as you can see from the course code, this is a full year essay course. And it's for honors specialization students with priority going to students in the Rehabilitation Sciences module. Now for this one, again, we're focusing on honors specialization students to be eligible, and you need that cumulative average of 75% again. There's about 6 practical hours a week for this one, plus a couple hours of seminar, and all of the different placements for Rehabilitation Sciences happen at Parkwood Institute here in London. Now, an important note is that if you're part of our School of Health Studies, so either in Health Studies or Rehabilitation Sciences, you can only do a full 1.0 credit in practicum and independent study. What that means, for example, is if you do the Rehabilitation Sciences, that full year practicum, you couldn't also do an independent study. So it's 1.0 between both of those opportunities. Now for kinesiology, again, we're looking at those 2 course codes there, kind of like health studies, where people might just do a term, or perhaps they secure a placement at the same organization and they enroll in both courses and do a full year. It's for honors specialization students in kinesiology modules, and we're looking at a modular average of 70% or higher. Once again, 6 to 8 hours of practical experience at those organizations, totaling 75 per term at least. And again, as a graded course, some of the things you could expect are those learning contracts, reflections, supervisor evaluations, etc. Now, something to note for all the programs I've talked about so far: health studies, rehabilitation sciences, and kinesiology. Since these are optional courses, they're not required for your programs, that unfortunately means that they're not available to our international students. They're also not available to special students, so perhaps students that are taking a few credits after completing a degree or possibly pursuing a full secondary degree. Now, for clinical kinesiology, this is a full year course, and it is a little different in that it is mandatory for all 4th year clinical kinesiology students. So if you're in this module, that means that it's mandatory for you. So again, 6 to 8 hours of practical experience a week. You can also expect to do about an hour a week of either class or self-reflection. And then every 4 weeks, you will also have 2-hour class meetings. So regardless of if it's an application or a survey, the difference being an application for people whose practicum is not guaranteed or required for their courses, so health studies, rehabilitation sciences, or kinesiology. For clinical kinesiology, it looks pretty similar, but we call it a survey since this is mandatory for your program, so you're not really applying, you have to do it. But we still want to know those interests and what you're about. Regardless of what it is, you'll be able to find your appropriate form, and the deadline for everybody is Sunday, April the 9th at 11:59 p.m. So getting it in before that Sunday is finished. Regardless of if it is an application or a survey, the different sections you can expect are some of your contact information, making sure it's that Western email address, your academic information, your interests, career goals, and experience. I'm particularly interested in that as the person who does the matching, which we'll talk about a little bit later. There'll be some terms and conditions, things that you can expect there, just so you understand everything, like practicums are unpaid. There may be some things that might be at your cost. And we'll talk about all of that throughout this presentation. And also a very important part, both for me and also for you and the organizations that are looking at you, will be your resume. Now, with that, you'll see an example on the screen of what the application will look like. So with that, this year we'll be using Microsoft Forms. So again, it looks a little bit like this. You'll need to be logged into your Western email account to be able to access these forms. So if you're having any trouble, perhaps you're linked into a different account. So just to be familiar with what it will look like. Now, once you get to the end of the application, there'll be a button where you can click to have your answers be emailed to you. And if you click that, you'll get an email at the end. If you don't, or if you do, either way, you'll know you successfully submitted your application when you get this up on your screen, this nice check mark with a thanks for submitting your practicum application or survey. So again, if you don't click that you want your results emailed to you, just know that you shouldn't expect another email afterwards. There'll also be a couple chances at that point, or also as you can see from this screen, where you can print or get a PDF of your answers too. So again, just to not expect another email unless you asked for one. Now, something that's new this year is a mandatory resume and interview workshop. And again, as you can see in those nice bold letters, it is mandatory. Now, this is really important because it helps give me more information as the person matching you to an opportunity about your work history, your experiences, and also your resume will be the first impression that you make to employers. I come from a career coaching background, so that means I have seen a lot of resumes. And there are simple steps that you can take to create an even more powerful document, and also simple tips and strategies to keep in mind to do even better in interviews. All of this helps you secure, have better chances of securing a placement if your placement is for a program where it's not guaranteed, like Clinical Kin, or also secure a placement that you're really, really excited about. And also resume and interviewing skills are essential skills for after you graduate. They come in handy when entering the job market, but also for things like graduate school, professional school, that kind of stuff. So you should be attending and doing this workshop first before you submit your application. The reason for this is in your application, in one of the steps, you'll have to upload your resume. So it'll be really, really good for you to attend this session first, learn the different strategies that I'd like to share with you and some best practices, then update your document, update your resume, and upload that nice refreshed document to your application. The links to register for these practicum sessions are already on our website. I know some of you have already registered. Thank you so much. And then also you can see the different times here. The first one is coming up next Tuesday, but there's 3 other chances. If you have a conflict with all of those times for some reason, please email us at experiencefhs@uwo.ca so we can discuss an alternative option with you, but it would be best to attend in person wherever, on Zoom, they're not in person. It would be best to attend like a live Zoom workshop wherever possible so you can engage with the content, the polls, and also ask some questions and do Q&A at the end. Speaking of Q&A, if you have some questions you'd be thinking about, I'd like to encourage you to use the Q&A box so everybody can benefit from seeing what your questions are. And again, they'll get answered towards the end of the presentation. Now, even though these workshops are coming up starting next week, that doesn't mean that you can't start updating your resume. So you can get some different resources and tools at career.uwo.ca. You can also access this QR code right now if you'd like to pull up some different resources. And this takes you to my former team, the career education team. Lots of great information on there. And also just being familiar with this website and this team. You can connect with a career coach by making an appointment, Or they also have drop-in hours Monday to Friday in the afternoons from 1 to 4 in their office in the University Community Center on the second floor. Connecting with a career coach can be really helpful if you want to think more broadly about like, what does this practicum experience mean? And like how it can fit into your like future plans. If you're not really sure what to do or you want to get some strategies in general, they're a great team to go to. And also just knowing that this is a resource that you have access to as a student, and you also continue to have access to them for 1 year after you graduate as well. Now, with that, after that 1 year, like when you're alumni a couple of years from now, just know as an alumni at Western, you also have lifelong access to career supports. They're just with a slightly different team. So I really encourage you to go to this website, look up their resources, and consider connecting with a career coach. I bet you'll be really happy if you do. Now, in terms of some application tips, what I would recommend is to first look at the PDF of the questions. That gives you an idea of what to expect. It's not a super lengthy application, but it's not really one that you can do in like a minute or two. It takes some thought, and I encourage you to be thoughtful about it. So look at those questions first, so you can take a little time to reflect on who you are, what your goals are, what experiences you're looking for, and also your needs. Like, what are you looking to get out of a practicum experience? Really sit with that and reflect, because the important part of any job searching process, which finding a practicum in some ways is kind of like that, we definitely help you, is really sitting with yourself and knowing who you are and what you want. And looking at the questions can assist with that. Now, as you go through that, I think this process, it's important to be focused, but also a little bit flexible. Focus in that sometimes students might say, I'm open to any practicum. And then we'll send them a tentative match and they're like, oh, but not that one. So again, you want to have some area of focus of kind of like what you want, because typically students aren't open to every single option, which is totally fine. But you also want to be flexible, because again, getting too specific can also make you miss out on opportunities. If you get too specific, we might not be able to find an organization that meets those needs. And also if you get too specific, you might miss out on some other opportunities that could be super valuable, like working with a population that you haven't engaged with, or could look nice on a professional school application, or maybe working in a slightly different environment that myself and Allison know will deliver some of the experiences you're looking for, but perhaps you just hadn't considered before. Now, something else to think about is that when you're going through the applications and surveys, I would love for you to be complete, really providing that information for me to understand who you are, what you're about, what are those interests and what are those experiences, but also be succinct. So kind of paying attention to the wording. I'll often ask for a list. So maybe list 3 organizations you're interested in doing a practicum with. So like, you don't need to do an essay there. And I also know you have lots of other writing to do for your classes. But also know that there are hundreds of you and only one of me. So it's important that you keep your answers complete and also within the scope of the application or the survey. So what that means is saying see resume is not super helpful for me, because I have some databases that I'll be working in. And again, lots and lots of you, only one of me. So wherever possible, answering those questions as completely as possible, but know that I'm going to be looking at your resume as well. That information will just be housed in a couple different places. Now, another tip is to, again, attend that resume session first, so you can learn some different best practices and foundational principles for resumes before uploading that document. So you'll be uploading your best document to provide me with as much information as possible, and also remembering that it's your first impression to different organizations. And lastly, right now is a great chance to do some research, because in the application, as I've already said, there'll be an opportunity, albeit optional, where you can list 3 organizations that you're interested in doing a practicum with. So just a few different things there to keep in mind. All right. Now, with that, just a reminder that this is a competitive process. And for those of you that are in health studies, rehabilitation sciences, or kinesiology, just know that it's not a guarantee. Not all who apply are guaranteed to get a placement. Now, the exception is clinical kinesiology, since this is a required part of your program, it's mandatory. But I don't say any of this information to scare you, but I also say it to, again, just be very upfront with the information, but also keep in mind that myself and Allison are working really, really hard to get as many students matched as possible, and also matching you with something that you can be really interested in, where you'll gain different skills and be set up for success. So again, it's not to scare you, but it's just to be honest and upfront. And also, there'll be some other things to consider, like when picking your courses and stuff, where knowing that it's not 100% guarantee will be important to consider. Now, with that, regardless of if it's an application, if it's a survey, if it's required for your program, or if it's not, your application and survey and your resume really matter. That helps me get information as the person who's going to be matching. We'll talk about matching soon, I promise. And it also, again, your resume is your first impression to those organizations when they're considering hosting a practicum student, and if you'd be the best match for the project that they have going on. This is why, once again, I'm going to put a push for you to use your resources. And this QR code is going to take you to those career education resources. So consider meeting with a career coach, looking at their resources, and also meeting with them to talk more broadly about the future and what that looks like. You can meet with them not just to talk about jobs, of course you can, but also like how professional school kind of can fit into your career and those next steps. They're really there to help you, and they're an excellent team to offer support. Now, with that, we're going to get into the matching process. So with that, we'll talk about pre-matching. So as a reminder, your applications, your surveys, everything, all communications for practicum are going to happen through your Western email account. So I know it's challenging to monitor that as much during the summer, but it's going to be really, really important this year. Now, with that, so again, the application or survey deadline is April the 9th. And after that, in April and May, the big thing that I'll be doing is reviewing your resumes. If I see something that really needs some help, that will be the point where I show it to you and maybe send it back with a little bit of feedback, asking for an update. So that's what will be happening in April and May. Then knowing in May and June is when your applications it'll kind of be confirmed if you are academically eligible. During this period is when adjudication happens and we see who will be going into what program, who met what averages, that kind of thing. So after that point in June, typically, is when you'll get an email from us to confirm your eligibility, like if you've met those different grade requirements for the practicum. And once we have that information, that's when this matching process will really begin. So matching, again, is going to happen between June and August. So this is where I'm going to review organization proposals and also your applications, surveys, and resumes. I'm going to determine the best fit of like what I can see from there. And what that means is that I'll select probably about 3 to 4 students. This will depend on the needs of the organization and how many spaces they have available. And with that, I'm going to send an email to you to confirm your interest. Hey, I looked at this proposal. I think you'd be the best match. Are you interested? Then if you say yes, I'm totally interested, which I hope you do, I will then email your resume to the organization. And from there, it's in the hands of the organization. The organization will connect with students, and they're the ones who will do interviews or have chats, whatever their needs are. And they are ultimately the ones that will select students, if any. So just know if you're not considered, you will get considered for other opportunities. And also know that your resume will go to one organization at a time. This helps kind of remove any confusion with yourself and organizations, and also myself and Allison as we're navigating this process. So for example, if we sent like everyone's resume to everybody, That's a lot for organizations to review, but also, for example, different organizations could be coming back with offers and things like that. So just knowing it goes one at a time to kind of keep the process nice and clean and not too overwhelming for anybody involved. And also to help our relationships with organizations continue to run smoothly, because again, we do go back to them for students to see if they can support more students from year to year. So making the process smooth for them and for you and for us is of importance to everybody involved. Now with that, I do have some expectations of you as we go throughout the process. So again, a lot of this is going to happen in the process, in the summer, when, May through August, even a little September sometimes, when you're probably not in classes for many of you, and you probably have some other things going on, but I do ask that you respond to emails within 48 hours. It's important because, again, we're working with external organizations, and it's important to get those resumes out to them so they can start their process, so we can get as many students in placements as possible. It's also important to be checking your Western email during the summer, because that's also the email that organizations will be using. And it's important to follow up with them promptly, because that's a reflection of you and if they'd like to take you on. But it's also a reflection more broadly of our programs here at Western and also our students, and to kind of keep that good impression for our continued relationships in the community as well. Now, this was something I had to get used to when I came into this role, but be sure to check your spam regularly, because sometimes, depending on the organization's domain of their email, the emails get caught in spam traps sometimes as well. So just something to be aware of. Now, I also ask that you be open, flexible, and patient. As much as we would love for everybody to get matched right away, once we have your marks in, this is a process that takes time. And it takes time for a number of reasons. There's lots of students that are looking for placements. There's lots of organizations. We're dealing with external partners, and just lots of back and forth that has to happen. I know the waiting process isn't a super fun one, but it is part of the process, and also a process to become more comfortable with, because it will come up again and again when applying to graduate schools, professional schools, or waiting to hear back from jobs kind of outside of a practicum context in the future. I also ask that you trust your coordinators. So that would be myself and Allison. You might come in with a really specific idea of what you'd like to do for your placement, and that's awesome. But there are also different areas and skills and experiences that can help you reach the goals that you have. In my experience as a career coach, I've seen students get hyper-focused on one kind of job, or one kind of placement, or one kind of career. And this can often mean that they miss out on other opportunities that could be useful, building different skill sets or working with different populations. That's why throughout the application process, I ask lots of things about your interests. I ask about your resume, and I also ask specifically about your career goals to get a sense of what you're looking for. So please trust that we are using all of the information available, and also our understanding of the different opportunities with the different organizations to kind of find those really great matches. And just also understanding that sometimes it looks a little different from what you expected, but it can still be really great. And just know that sometimes there's a broader picture in mind that you might not see right away. But as kind of career professionals and career development practitioners, we can sometimes see those broader pictures. And also as someone a little more removed from the process, it's not my resume being sent. And that can also, help me be broader with ideas too. So just trust us and know that we have your best interests and all that information in mind. Now with that, you are also welcome to connect with different organizations. So that can mean that you can find your own practicum opportunities. You might already have some in your network that you're thinking about, or you might be keen to start doing more research. All that we ask is before you reach out to an organization, or if you already have and you're just learning this today, no worries. Just send us an email at experiencefhs@uwo.ca. You'll also receive an email from us after the presentation today with some next steps. So it will be a friendly reminder in there. We just ask that you do that because Allison is working really, really hard right now, reaching out to different organizations to secure opportunities. And we might already have something underway or maybe a connection that could be helpful. So again, definitely do your research. We do encourage that. But just before you send a message, check in with us so we can kind of let you know what's going on with that one. And then keep us informed as you go through the process. Now, I have a few other important notes before we talk about some examples, which I know you're all looking forward to, and then we'll open it up to Q&A. Friendly reminder to open up the Q&A box to submit your questions there so everybody can benefit from seeing them, and you can also see what's already in there in case your question has been asked by somebody else. So with that, just understanding that for some placement sites, particularly ones that are in like more clinical environments like Parkwood or perhaps other hospital positions, clinics, etc., there may be some additional things that you need to do, and just knowing that those will be at the cost of the student, at your cost. So they might require certain vaccinations like COVID boosters, flu shots, maybe other things, perhaps TB testing, mask fitting, police checks, first aid, other trainings and confidentiality. It can really depend from organization to organization, but just know that there could be some other things that you need to do before you are able to start your placement hours. And again, if there's costs associated with that, that would be at the cost of the student that's involved. Now, let's also talk about courses, since that will be coming up in the summer as these processes are happening. So for course enrollment, first I'd like to talk to my clinical kinesiology students in the Zoom. So your practicum is mandatory, required, guaranteed for you. So what that means is that the practicum course associated with clinical kinesiology, you'll be able to add that into your timetable right away as you're doing your courses for next year. So you won't have to wait, you already have the permissions to do that. Now, for everybody else, again, just that reminder that for health studies, kinesiology, and rehabilitation sciences, your practicums are not guaranteed, but we're working really hard to get as many of you as placed as possible. What this means is that when you are picking your courses, you won't be able to enroll in a practicum course right away. You will only be given the permissions to enroll in the appropriate course after you have a confirmed placement, like we know 100% that it is happening. So with that, what that means is when you're picking your courses in the summer, because you're going to have to do that most likely in almost all cases before you have a 100% confirmed placement, pick a course selection that doesn't have the practicum in it. Like you won't be able to add that course in, so just make sure you have that full course load for you with all your courses in there, but then have an idea of which course that you would swap or drop to add your practicum course in there in the event that you are placed. So again, setting yourself up for success in the event that you aren't placed for practicum, so you don't have a gap in your schedule instead of waiting the other way around, but then having some ideas of what course would you drop in the event that you are placed and can enroll in the course. So just keeping that in mind. But now the part that many of you have been waiting for, which is to talk about some example opportunities. So if you go on our website right now, there are some different lists of like different organizations that we partnered with in the past, but just knowing that those lists change from year to year. And this is also the first time that the experiential learning coordinator position has been split. There's two of us, the A team, myself, Alyssa, and Allison. Allison being the person who's working with partners. That also means there's more capacity to look at new opportunities and explore new options. And just know that Allison has been hard at work since she started in January on this. So just know that that list will change, it will grow, but it's already underway. And also any opportunities that you bring to the table through your networking and research and that kind of stuff. But let's talk about some examples. So first off, I have a health studies example. So for example, right now we have a few students that are at Amica. And Amico works with a wide range of clients who are kind of independent through assisted living, and they have a variety of different conditions or ailments that they experience. So with that, what some of our students are doing is they're both creating and leading health programming for residents, incorporating their interests, but also all dimensions of wellness. So this means considering different programming, putting schedules together, and then also leading some of that programming, which is super cool. But with this, I also want to turn it over to Gabby, who is one of our current health studies practicum students, to talk more about their experience and to give you some tips about navigating this application process. Gabby, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Alyssa. So hi, my name is Gabby. I'm a fourth year honors specialization student, and I am currently conducting a practicum at the City of Kawartha Lakes Family Health Team. And it is, currently remote. So I do everything online and with mostly with Zoom and email. So just like my little day-to-day, wake up, log on to my email, see what I have to do for the day. It's usually an assignment over a couple of weeks. So right now I'm working with the strategic planning team. So I'm setting the mission, vision, and values for the family health team, as well as creating a lot of infographics. I'm also working on some health promotion material as well. So very wide range of things I could be doing, but one thing that's consistent is I have weekly check-ins with my supervisor, who just makes sure everything's going well and then figure out where we want to go from there. Yeah, some of the things that Alyssa were saying is keep an open mind, and I cannot emphasize that more. I did no idea what a family health team really did before I joined my practicum, and I wasn't entirely sure I wanted to accept it when I was interviewing for it. But now that I've done it, it's one of the best experiences I've ever had in my undergrad. It's really opened the doors to a whole other field in healthcare, and I've even gotten a position this summer. So it's great to network as well and build off of undergrad. So that's great. Some tips. I would definitely do your research and make sure your CV is ready to go, or CV or resume. I had a few options before, and I was looking at some different organizations, but I really resonated with the family health team when I interviewed with them. So just keep an open mind. It's a little bit of a competitive process, so don't get too discouraged. A couple of mine were rejected, and I eventually got in with the family health team. So yeah, not exactly too sure what else I should say about that, but yeah.
That was wonderful. Thank you, Gabby, for talking more about your experience. Congrats on landing that summer position. What a wonderful success story, and tips for our students. We really appreciate it. All right, so that kind of wraps it for health studies for now, but let's move on to rehabilitation sciences. So just as a reminder, for the Rehabilitation Sciences practicum, all of the different rehabilitation sciences practicums take place at Parkwood Institute here in London. And we're super lucky to have such a specialized rehab center right here in London. And that's where different teams of clinicians are collaborating in some of these different areas. So we have some students that are working with like spinal cord injury patients, with doing stroke rehabilitation, acquired brain injury rehabilitation, and with different teams of clinicians, kind of depending on what's required. But again, everything happening here at Parkwood Institute, which we're super lucky to have so close to us. Now, for kinesiology, I have a couple of examples here. For this first one, for the Canadian Cancer Society, we actually have both kinesiology and health studies students at this placement right now. So we have students that are conducting different evidence reviews for cancer prevention, and they're doing that in support of the health policy team for the Canadian Cancer Society. This is also an example of a practicum who this year took multiple students on for placement. So sometimes it's one student, sometimes it's several, and then sometimes, you know, the needs of an organization can change from year to year. Also in a kinesiology context, we have different students working across different sports kind of organizations, different teams, be it professional teams like the London Lightning or other teams across our city. And also we have some students working at golf courses like Fire Rock, for example, just outside of London. And they're creating and leading different dry land training and programming for the different athletes that use or attend or are part of those organizations. Now onto clinical kinesiology. So again, clinical kinesiology, as part of those courses, there is a final deliverable that students will need to do. So for example, one that happened recently was at Healthy Hearts Cardiac Rehab. And at this organization, the student's final deliverable was to create a COPD intake patient manual. As also part of intake, there were like intake interviews, stress tests, and then they designed a weekly educational schedule and also resources for the patients as they were going through that COPD programming. But also we have another current practicum student here to tell you a little bit more about their experience. So I will turn it over to Talita.
Hi, everybody. So I am in clinical kinesiology, and so it's CAN 4590. It is in person at a physiotherapy, but also interdisciplinary clinic. I focus on the physiotherapy. Day to day, I help with heat treatments and ultrasound and prescribing exercise to the patients. Most of the patients suffer from motor vehicle accident injuries, so my focus is definitely there. As part of the deliverable, which Alyssa explained, we have to do a project culminating the whole year. So I am creating an exercise program and tracking sheets for the patients so they can adhere to exercise. If you're in kinesiology, which you all are, I'm sure you know how important that is. And one of the most meaningful parts of my experience has really been getting to know the patients. So this entire year I've been going in on Tuesdays and on Thursdays. So I really get to see the patients progressing over time, which is really, really nice to see their improvements. And sometimes they even graduate from physiotherapy, which is always nice to see their success. Advice for you guys. One thing that Alyssa has mentioned, but just to reiterate, is definitely to be on your email during the summer. I know it can be really, really difficult, but even just downloading the Outlook app on your phone and adding in your school email, just because the things that you want may go quickly, just because there's so many people that the placement coordinators need to place. And the last thing I would recommend for clinical, but also for all students, is if possible, maybe to take a little bit of a lighter course load. If it's in health studies and you're only doing a semester, then focusing easier course load in that semester, just because the placements can be quite a few hours. So just keeping that in mind when you're making your schedule in the summer. And that is it.
Thank you so much for sharing your experiences. That sounds really meaningful to get to know those patients and have some of them even graduate and not needing that physical therapy anymore. But also some great tips there about being on your email and being mindful not just of the course itself, but those practical hours that you'll be doing as you're picking your courses to kind of decide what should go where. Now, with that, we're nearing the end where we'll open it up for Q&A, but just a few next steps and things to think about. So right now, here's some different things that you can consider doing. So for example, definitely review those application or survey questions. They're already available on our website. And for those of you in clinical kinesiology, you would have received an email from me on Monday with the link to your survey and also a PDF of your application questions. Another great next step would be to sign up for that mandatory resume and interview workshop. There are 3 different options. You only need to attend one. It's the same thing happening 3 times, but do that first before submitting your application or survey, just because as part of that process, again, to reiterate, you'll have to upload your resume at a certain step, and you want that to be the best resume that you can upload It's a reflection of you, that first impression to the organization, and also very helpful information for me as the person matching you. Another step you could do is connect with career education, those career coaches, to look at their supports both online or maybe meet with a career coach either through an appointment or in person. Research organizations to kind of see what you might want to do, or maybe find some other leads and start broadening that network for this process. And that can also be a great step, start broadening your network now to support you after graduation as well. And then a friendly reminder to submit your applications, like not a thing to start today, but just something to remember is that that deadline is again coming up on April the 9th. So with that is the end of our content that we were hoping for all of you to get today. You can see our email on there. You will get an email from us later tonight. I'm also going to throw the email in the chat. But if you have questions for myself or Allison, please email experiencefhs, like Faculty of Health Sciences, at uwo.ca. You can pull that from the chat, or you can expect an email from us later tonight.